Greetings, my name is Anna O'Keefe. I'm here to tell my story, so I'm going to start at the beginning. I do have some notes because it's been such a long time I can't remember everything. So I was born in 1834 on Christmas Day, and that was in Tipperary County, Ireland. And I'm sorry, it slips out. I can't help it. I am Irish, so it does slip out. I am of English and Scottish descent as well, and my line is from Mary, Queen of Scots. So there is the royal bloodline in me. I am Catholic. That is how I was born and raised. And I was very well educated. In fact, I carried a little writing desk with me, from Ireland all the way over when I moved to the States. My parents decided when I was 11 years old to move to the Americas. So in 1844 we came over by sailboat. And unfortunately my mother contracted cholera. And I'm not sure if it was the cholera or the terrible medicine that they gave her, thick, black, gooey liquids. She did pass on the ship and she was given a burial at sea. So my father, Richard Lester, and myself landed in Ontario, Canada, and then came right down to Council Bluffs, Iowa. And we lived there for quite a few years. And then in 1863, I decided, after corresponding for a couple years with my friends who lived in Virginia City, that I myself would travel. I was born with that journey spirit that my parents pretty much passed down to me. So I decided I would travel to Virginia City. We traveled by ox train, and it was a 3-month arduous journey. It was terrible, to say the least. We'd heard terrible rumors of the horrendous attacks by the natives. Lots of butchery happened. It was really bad and dangerous to be a white person coming over, but we made it unscathed. Every evening we would make a circle of the wagons, and these were ox trains, these were not horses, so it was very slow going. But after 3 months we did finally make it to Virginia City in September of 1863. We were exhausted, it was downpouring, and my first real memory of Virginia City, my first true experience there, was we decided we would go into a restaurant, a true indoor restaurant, and buy a meal. So as we sat down, I noticed the ceiling was covered in oxhide. Unfortunately, they were poorly tanned oxhide, and as it rained outside, the maggots fell down in the restaurant, which some could say it's extra protein, but I just pick them out and toss them aside. It was my first memory. My first position that I held there in Virginia City was as a seamstress, and then I became a school teacher. Excuse me. Oh, this cold weather just gets it to me every time. It was as I was a school teacher that Cornelius C. O'Keefe, or known as the Baron, this was a self-proclaimed title of his. He came over this is 1865, with a wagon full of potatoes from his property. He came over to Virginia City to sell them to the merchants. He and I met. We crossed paths. And this man was charming, and he was ornery, and he was Irish, and it reminded me of my home. And honestly, I think it was the handlebar mustache that really got me in the end. And it was a 3-day whirlwind courtship. Thank you all. Oh, these days, my mind, I'm old, I apologize. This courtship did end with our getting married. I was 22 and it was well time I got married. And the Baron, as he was self-proclaimed Baron and known as, that's what everybody called him, he promised me a life of ease and plenty at the Palace O'Keefe outside of Missoula, Montana. So you can imagine my surprise and true dismay when we pulled up to the one-room dirt floor shack with sod roof. Now this is property that he and his brother homesteaded in the 1850s. He was the first white, he and his brother were the first white homesteaders in the area. And this is at the base of Evero Hill in the wide valley. To this day, you can still find the O'Keefe Creek that ran through our property. That's there running still. So we raised 2 daughters in this one-room shack. The Nez Perce Indians actually helped my husband and his brother build this shack of ours. And I tell you, it was something. Life as a pioneer woman, it was exhilarating, it was exciting, and it was terribly lonely as well, and it was hard work. Really no other white people and no women other than Frenchtown or Missoula. So we didn't travel to the city much. So we were out there, and I raised my daughters as best I could. Gave them a very good life, I would say, and I was well educated, very well educated back home. In fact, I carried a little writing desk with me all the way from home on the sail ship through the plains and brought to my little cabin. And I would correspond back home with relatives. So I had my writing desk, and in that writing desk, I decided to start keeping a scrapbook that I would someday leave to my daughters. And in that scrapbook, what I wanted to do was really give my daughters a sense of what being a genteel woman really meant. So you could have your pioneer life, and you could be a true lady of the time, and it could work together. So I put in there pictures of Mary Queen of Scots, which I was descendant of, so were they. And the Tsar of Russia was in there. And I had beautiful Victorian Valentines that I had received from overseas, and scraps of lace, and many pressed flowers. All from back home, I brought them with me, and from all over the prairies here in Montana. Just little things to show my girls what a more genteel life could be like for a lady growing up in this time. So where we lived, the Blackfeet would come, and they would fight. They would fight a lot with the other Indians that we were friendly with. And my husband, the Baron, was actually blood brother to Chief Charlot. And one day, my little daughter Molly decided she'd had enough of the fighting and the bloodshed, and she wanted to go run away and live with the Indians. So she actually climbed, an 8-year-old child, in 1875 all the way up to the top of Evero Hill and decided to live with Chief Arlee and his Flathead tribe. So you could imagine my panic when I couldn't find my daughter, so I threw her sister on my horse, and off we went gallivanting about, desperately looking. For 3 days we searched for my daughter, and we went to the French trappers. Nobody had seen her. We went to Missoula, nobody had seen her. I finally thought, well, if I go up to the top of Evero Hill, I might look out and possibly see her somewhere, some sign of her. I didn't find her, but Chief Arlee found me, thank goodness. He took me to his encampment with my other daughter, with Margaret, and she brought me Molly, safe and sound. And Molly had actually, a few days earlier, found a squaw in the field and said, I want to come live with you. And she didn't speak English, so she took Molly by the hand and dragged her to the chief, and she said, I want to come live with you. And he said, well, you can live with us, but you must live like all the other Flathead children, and you'll earn your way. So they taught her how to properly tan hides. They taught her how to dig for roots. They taught her how to properly cook buffalo. And as he brought her to me, tears streaming down my face, just thank you, Chief, for finding my daughter, he gave her back and said she would make a proper squaw someday, which I wasn't terribly fond of, but a compliment was in there somewhere, I'm sure. So there were many other adventures that we had, my daughters and I. And in this scrapbook that I'd mentioned, I actually, I did write a lot of poetry. And there's a little bit of one poem that I would like to share with you, if that's okay, that I wrote about my Montana town, my Montana home. It's been a long time, I have it written down. I love its sunny fountains as through its woods I roam. When wandering o'er its dark green hills, I sometimes wend my way. I love to hear the murmuring rills make music day by day. And oft times entranced I gaze upon the setting sun upon its gorgeous tinted rays when its workday is done. And this is very much like the pioneer life. You rise with the sun and you retire with the sun. That was the way it was of the days. And we did end up building 2 additional homes on the O'Keefe Ranch. Our second home was beautiful. It had real wood floors, which really excited me, and we had several rooms. And then our third and final home, which really was my O'Keefe Palace. It was more of the Edwardian style, and it was a 2-story white home with the pillars in front and the long dirt drive leading up to it, and we planted cottonwoods up either side of the lane. Now, my husband did pass before me, and being raised Catholic, he's buried just down the road at St. Mary's Cemetery. And after that, I went to live with my daughter Margaret and her husband Kenneth Ross. Now, the Ross family was a Protestant family, and I didn't tell anybody before I passed if I had actually converted to this Protestant religion. So you'll find me buried here with the Ross family. And I was laid to rest in 1900. And that's my story, and I thank you. And if you have any questions, let me know.
Thank you.
Thank you all very kindly.
Thanks for sharing.
Thank you.